Thank you so much for tuning in. Dr. Judy here, Dr. Judy WTF, and today we're going to talk about the empathy void. Can a narcissistic culture truly heal? Well, it's interesting because today is 9/11, and I'm sure it's the funeral of Charlie Kirk, and I just want to express my heartfelt grief for what occurred yesterday. What a wonderful human being he was. What a loving, courageous man for expressing his views, whether you agreed with him or not. He was very open to hearing everybody's opinion, and for him to be taken down in such a brutal way is just exactly what we're going to be addressing today. The empathy void. What's going on in our society? There's a huge empathy void. I'm trying to address it through healing human disconnect, healing global disconnect. I guess I can't do it alone. So I invite my audience to join me and give me suggestions as to how to get the word out about a united humanity. And in case you don't have my other website, it is healingglobalDisconnect.com. And the message is loud and clear on that website. Please go there and read it. I also updated my website, psychologicalhealingcenter.com, and we've got some very cool images on there of the mind map and the whole encoding, decoding, recoding process. So do check that out. So, yeah, that is the problem. We lack empathy, and wherever we lack empathy, we can do whatever the heck we want. We can shoot people, we can do whatever. It doesn't matter because we're not feeling it. So, what's the missing here is the connection, and on a global scale, the interconnection, because whether we like it or not, we are all interconnected. So, can we heal as a culture, as a society, without empathy? I don't think so. I really don't think so because I've done so many videos on this power and control versus love and intimacy. And if you're going to lean into power and control, which sometimes we have to, because when we have an enemy trying to knock us down, then I use the example of somebody trying to get through my door and my grandson is on the other side. Well, what am I going to do? I'm going to save my grandson. And the empathy is there in that I don't want to shoot that person, but that person is inviting himself or herself to put themselves in harm's way. So that's a whole nother story. But again, it boils down to we are interconnected. And when we get to a place in our consciousness where we realize that to hurt another human being is really to hurt ourselves, that's when we will arrive. Okay? So what's happening on a PTSD global scale? A lot. Every time a person, a wonderful person, an outspoken person such as uh, Charlie Kirk, or anybody for that matter, who is on the right side of integrity and good character and honesty and truth and the light, whenever anything happens to a person like that, it threatens people who are like that on some level. I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm preaching global unity and I'm talking about healing global disconnect and human disconnect. And you know what? Some people don't like that. Some people don't want global connection. They don't want interconnection. On the contrary, they want to eliminate and isolate and become more ismed in their own way. So what do I mean by that is if we take the mind map out and let's hey Tony, can you get on my website because I want to show people this, okay? I want to show them the process.
Is that the global healing global disconnect?
Well, okay, let's start with that. And I could read the message and then we'll go on my psychologicalhealingcenter.com so you guys could see what I am talking about here.
Let me connect to that. I can get that up for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, where are you at?
Appreciate it. And then, we can have a discussion about it. Hopefully somebody will call in or write in, and we can dive into this matter of empathy and really cultural trauma, which is what is going on and has always been going on. Because we are, every time something happens, we're globally traumatized, okay? Globally. And every time we try to heal and something else opens up that wound, we get to re-experience it, and then the healing becomes almost impossible because it's a constant violation of opening up the wound. Do you have that website, healingglobalDisconnect.com?
Well, that's because I'm trying to get it up, but there's your psychological
Okay, so
healing.
let's start there. Okay,
All right,
so
perfect.
you can scroll down and you can show people the new website, which is really putting a lot of emphasis on the power of the mind map, which I now can really attest to because I've been doing it for a decade plus, much more than a decade, with stellar results, especially over traditional therapy where we don't get to the cause. And I want you to scroll down if you can.
Got
And
it.
let's look at the process and discuss the process, because since this is a visual medium, I get to show you visually the process.
All right, here we
Can you
go.
scroll down? Okay, there it is, encoding. So first of all, we encode everything. We encode our first few years of life, the way our parents neglect us or esteem us or violate us in all kinds of ways. And so let's show the process. Let's show encoding. 1, 2, 3. So you see that? Look, wounds of childhood, what are they? Physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse and neglect, control, smothering, narcissistic parenting. So those are the wounds of childhood. And then they expand into cultural wounds, racism, any kind of ism, separationism, um, violence against other human beings, verbal violence, physical violence, sexual violence, you name it. Um, Threat of death, actual shooting, bombing, you name it. There are the wounds. And now we have reactions to the wounds. And how do you like the images, Tony? I love
I
them so
like it.
much.
Did you draw them?
No, actually, my yoga instructor came over and took a picture of the mind map and
Oh, wow.
used AI to generate these beautiful images. Okay, so thank you, Brian, for generating these amazing images. And I'm a storyteller. So look, we're wounded. We're wounded emotionally. We're wounded culturally. We're wounded globally. And then what do? We react as babies. We fight, flee, freeze, and fawn. On a global scale, what do? We have PTSD. People come back from wars, or people even they watch the wars on TV and they're already traumatized. They see blood, they see people being raped and murdered and so on. And so, look at the visual of it. It's almost like an open wound and it just keeps reverberating. And it's not healing, is it? Not at all. So it's so painful that every time something reactivates the reaction, it keeps going. It doesn't heal. It's like the wound that won't heal. And then as a result of that, we encode messages. And these messages are not always the greatest. Like we can encode on a global scale, let's be paranoid, let's hate certain factions of people because they represent threat or difference in philosophy or something like that. And so now we're encoding all of the ways that we've tried to figure out to not be wounded and react and have horrible reactions. And then what happens is instead of protecting us, let's follow the yellow brick road of the story. Instead of protecting us with a good DNA strand that really is in integrity and resonates, no, we now go into shambles. So let's go look at the decoding process. So we fall into decoding, chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. And so, what does that chaos look like to you? You know, we try to protect ourselves, but do we really? I don't think so. I think that we just get more and more chaotic, and panel 4 is a great description of human disconnect. So you could see all of those bonds are broken and disconnected to, and they're pulsating and they're not in sync with each other, and there's discord, and you could see the process of the discord. And then what do? Okay, so as a result of all this discord and lack of empathy, there's the lack of empathy. Is anybody connected? Visually, it's a metaphor for not at all. On the contrary, disconnected. And then when we're disconnected and in chaos, what do? We double down and we protect ourselves further. And those little bubbles that are turning and twirling represent isms. We protect ourselves with defense mechanisms, or we ism, meaning we divide into different cultures, religions, ideologies, philosophies. And that's not necessarily bad in and of itself. It's just horrible, though, when we use one against another to panel number 6. That's where it all breaks down into a clash of the isms, which is the breakdown and hopefully the opportunity, because everything's an opportunity. When we have isms, it's an opportunity to use our isms to fortify ourselves and to strengthen our individualism and to educate ourselves so that we're smarter isms and more empathic isms and more wise isms. We can go that way, or we could just be more defense mechanisms and disconnect more and more from each other, finally leading to such selfishness, such animosity toward each other, because everybody now feels like a paranoid threat. And look at panel number 6. It's like the showdown. There it is. World War. Anything to do with violence. Okay? The showdown. So what creates a showdown is when somebody is triggered by something, right? They don't like what somebody says, or they don't like somebody's philosophy, or they don't like somebody's color or religion or orientation or whatever it may be, gives them fuel. Do you see? It fuels them up to attack instead of empathy and understanding and trying to get to know one another and connect on levels of questioning, which is what deeply saddens me about the death of Charlie Kirk. He didn't do that. He questioned people. He wanted to confront people's opinions so he can expose different views and arrive at the highest truth possible. So that's what I mean by panel 6 could be an opportunity. If you want to do confrontation, fine. But, look what's happening to our confronters. I'm a confronter. Okay, I confront human disconnect. So some confronters are not appreciated because people would rather backtrack into denial, which is panel number 5, defenses, and live in chaos and not threaten their original core beliefs and DNA blueprinting, and deny the reactions and bury their heads about the childhood wounds. So, anytime you expose truths, you're in a dangerous place. And I do acknowledge that. It's just that for me, it's the best place in the world. Okay, so it's a duality. Expose the truth and people can knock you down and annihilate, or expose the truth, and people can so benefit and break through and be the cause of a better outcome, not only for their own life, but for the lives of others. So let's see what's possible when you turn back on the empathy. So you can see that decoding is where we fall apart and clash and blow each other up. Okay, let's go look at panel number 789. So what's that? So we've got a paradigm shift. Wow, big word, paradigm shift. Two words, big words. What is a paradigm shift? A paradigm shift is a clear lens of perception. It's almost like looking through the eyes of God, higher power, truth, whatever you identify with as clear, unconditional, loving, truthful lens of perception. Okay, and when I say unconditional love, I don't mean accept whatever is not healthy. I'm saying that you look at things with a deep understanding, a great wisdom, a great sense of knowing. And so when you have that and those bubbles connect, see, those bubbles are no longer clashing and crashing, they're dancing. That's why I think this image is so beautiful. They're dancing, they're producing synergy, my favorite word. 1 + 1 is greater than 2. It produces the light. So every time people get together and synergize and they create more than who they are alone, you get the light. Okay? And the light is empathy. And the light is sharing. And the light is expansive. And the light is connected back to truth. Okay, so do you see that without empathy, there's no dancing, there's no recoding, which is the healing panel. So now let's look at what's possible once we interconnect and we put our energies together and we become more than who we are as an individual. Then we can build a new human, and I'll call it a humane DNA strand. And this humane DNA strand considers the planet, because if you look at panel number 8, the planet is clean, it's blue and green and healthy looking, and it looks peaceful and unpolluted. The old panels look more uh, heavy and toxic waste. And this is what's possible, because when we have empathy, not only do we have empathy for the human race, we have empathy for the planet, we have empathy for the earth. We don't want to mess up our earth. We don't want to hurt animals. We don't want to hurt our vegetation. We just don't want to hurt, period. And how does that happen? We have to feel connected. Okay, so if you look at panel number 8, we can only heal by climbing the evolutionary ladder, and for today's purposes, we'll call it the ladder of empathy. The more we care, the more we share, the higher we climb. And you can notice that the little people on the ladder, I know they're hard to see, but there are actually little people on the ladder, and the ones on the bottom rung are being dragged up, or they're being helped up, and the one on top is helping up, and everybody's either helping or being helped. And that's how we are as a human race. We either need to reach for help, or we are the help. And we've got to function in both worlds. And when there's a lack of empathy, all we really care about is ourselves. And so we're not really plugged into helping others, because we don't see any value to ourselves about it, our selfishness about it. Why help others when we can help ourselves? And that is a true disconnection from the concept of unity, a united humanity. When it's a one-way street, when we don't see ourselves as interconnected and one human race, and I've got to write the book. Somebody's got to give me a good kick in the butt about this. I've got to write my book, Healing
Kick.
Global. What's that?
I said kick.
Yeah, thanks. Healing Global Disconnect. Be the cause. Okay, it's important, and it's going to be challenging for me because um, I'm not a politician, and I don't want to write this as a politician. I consider myself to be a connector and helping people to connect and stay connected. And I also realize that you can't connect with certain individuals who have no empathy. Those are not people to connect with, okay? So don't read me wrong. Don't think that we have to dance with the enemy. No. And who is the enemy? Anybody that's not humane, okay? Not the enemy is somebody that's a different color or different religion or different race or different anything. The real enemy is inhumane consciousness. Does that make sense to the people who are listening? I want to hear from you. This
Uh,
is really
it definitely
important.
makes sense to me, and I do have a question
Yes.
from a chat room person. What if somebody thinks if I can say it, empathy is a weakness of strength?
Well, it could be a weakness if you're empathizing with a narcissist. I mean,
Right.
I've done so many shows about that. And that's another thing is that sometimes people's empathy, good-heartedness, good nature is used to milk them of narcissistic supply. Okay, so in that case, we're not in panel number 7, which is the dancing panel. It looks more like a vampire effect, which is where the light is being sucked out of the empath,
Hmm.
and the other one is growing, but not really, only growing in selfishness. And so, what was the question? Is that about
Well, it just saying is because there are some leaders that said, I mean, I've even heard it saying empathy is a weakness.
empathy without boundaries?
Okay.
You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can be as empathic as ever, and I like my empathy, but if somebody comes to hurt my dogs,
Right. Right.
you know, let's put them in there. They're important, or my loved ones are not doing the right thing, then I don't consider them a member of the humane race. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
the distinction is not in, oh, the black person's here, or the white person's here, or the Jewish person's here, or the Muslim person's here, or the Christian person's here. The distinction is
Mm-hmm.
what is their consciousness? What's their intention?
Right.
What are they bringing that's of the light? Okay, and that's, we're making a big mistake in how we draw our divisional lines. And that's what's getting us in big trouble. And we're doing it understandably because we're scared. So we could just label all these kinds of people bad and all those kinds of people good. But is every one of those people that you label great really great? Or is every one of those? And it is true that certain cultures or nations or whatever have a national consciousness. Okay, that's true, and that's worth paying attention to. So what is the intention of the people? That's really interesting, and I know that goes into politics, which I don't love because, first of all, I'm not very knowledgeable in that arena, although I watch lots and lots of YouTubes, and some of the people that I love to watch are people like Jordan Peterson. I think he's a truth teller. Douglas Murray, I think he's an amazing truth teller. I love to watch Charlie Kirk. I love to watch Mossab Hassan, who was the son of Hamas, a big truth teller, and people who actually jeopardize themselves by telling the truth. If somebody is jeopardizing themselves to tell the truth, you could probably believe them because, you know, what's in it for them unless they want lots and lots of PR, which is always possible. But I go back to the original. Let's put the mind map back up again and do the corrective version, okay, of the mind map. So here it is. Panel one, the wound. The wound is a place where the light enters. That's a quote by Rumi. And when the light enters you, it's supposed to soften your heart, isn't it? It's supposed, even when you're wounded, you're supposed to not only cry for yourself, you're supposed to cry for people who are going through woundings. If somebody has been abused, then they have choices. They can either side with the darkness and become abusive, or they can develop empathy for abuse and become healers, which is what I chose to do. And so every single panel has the opportunity of the darkness and the light. And so you write your script. Even panel number two, do you have to be a reactor? Fight, flight, free, and fawn? I mean, sometimes you do. Sometimes you want to get the hell out of there. Sometimes you freeze because you don't know what to do. Sometimes you retreat and fawn, and there are all kinds of postures we take. But in a perfect world with consciousness as causal, what we want to do is we want to shut down our reactivity. And in that place where we're going to do something reactive, which we might regret later, we stop. We take a pause and we pull back until we connect to the light and know more, and then act out of proaction and not reaction. And I want to give the Kabbalah information credit for this, because I learned all of this proactivity and reactivity from my studies of Kabbalah. And then in panel number three, we'll just go through it again so that I could really make my point. So instead of encoding all this toxicity, do you see the toxic haze in the background? We have the opportunity to confront our negative core beliefs and to confront the state of the world and to confront our own mental state and say, hey, I've been encoded with misinformation, and this is where it lies. Oh, negative core belief, I'm not good enough. Misinformation. Negative core belief, I shouldn't have even been born. Misinformation. Okay, so somehow you have to pick through this stuff and acknowledge that you have been coded with misinformation. So it's an encoding gone wrong that creates a system gone wrong that ends up in chaos and defenses and breakdowns. Okay, and throughout this whole process, if you have empathy, the turnout is much different than if you don't. If you don't have empathy, I guarantee you're going to find yourself sooner or later in panel number 6, breakdown. If you are operating out of the consciousness of interconnection and desire to reveal truth and desire to connect to humane beings, and I'm going to leave out the inhumane because they're not worth being connected to. They can be rehabilitated at the most, but some of them can't be. I've been a psychologist long enough to know that there's certain people that just I haven't figured out how to turn people like Jeffrey Dahmer around. I know he's not around and not my patient, but if he were on my couch, I don't know if I can do it. Some people go too far to the evil side, and they're not amenable to seeing the light. They're just buried under the darkness. So depending on how you choose to live your life, you can either go through wounds, reactions, encodings, chaos, defenses, and then break down, or you can use the first encodings of your life to say, wow, that really hurt. I want to make a difference. I want to make a difference to myself. I want to heal my wounds and then leave a better um, outcome for myself and the next generation. And it's only through empathy because look, apathy, what's the difference between, what's the opposite of love? Anybody want to take a guess in the chat room?
Repeat that one more time.
What is the opposite of love?
There's a little delay, but somebody just said hate.
You know, you think so, right? Good guess. But the opposite of love is actually apathy.
Hmm. Wow.
Okay, if I hate you, I still have feelings for you.
True.
They're
True.
not
Yeah, it's true.
yummy feelings, they're not great feelings, but you know, I hate you. So, you know, there's juice there, there's energy there. So maybe we could still work it out because I don't think people want to remain in the state of hate. But if I don't care, is your modus operandi. The apathy button is now stuck in mode apathy. Um, there's no caring. I don't love, I don't hate, I don't feel. No, doesn't matter. I can push the red button, the yellow button, the green button. I can do whatever. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. And that's true narcissism, but more than that, it's now sociopathy because there is no caring at all. You know, it's almost like emotional numbness, or not only emotional numbness, but the empathy nerves have died. There's no flow, just robotic, you know, killing weapons. So, how can a society heal when there's no feeling on the other side? How can I be a healer to other people if I don't feel somewhat of their pain? Can't can't do it. You know, I don't have to have gone through exactly what they went through, but if I can't feel some of it and I have no empathy, then I'm basically a robot and AI might as well just replace me because that's what's going to happen, right? Psychotherapists are going to be replaced with AI and everything's going to be replaced, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about AI. Do they really have feelings or they only have programmed responses that look like feelings? Because there's a difference.
Dr. Judy, I have a question. I think this is a really good one. It says, Dr. Judy, if empathy requires us to understand another person's pain, then how do we empathize with someone who is incapable of empathy themselves, like a narcissist? Is that a paradox that makes true healing impossible?
That is a great question, and I ask that of myself. Am I required to feel sorry for narcissists? Am I required to feel sorry for people who hurt and murder and so on? Am I required to do that? And I think I'm not required to care about somebody that doesn't have empathy, but I am required to care to try to fix that, you know? That's sad, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, as a human being, I'm not going to waste a lot of time bleeding my heart out over people who are um, cruel and evil. You know, I'm reading a book, Dracula, Bram Stoker. It's so interesting. Never thought I'd read it, but I am. And it really truly talks about evil, okay? As does 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏 in his book, People of the Light. I'm very interested in evil. Do I empathize with Dracula, or at least the character of? Do I empathize with people who are the guy that shot Charlie Kirk? Do I empathize with him? Not at all. No, I'm sorry, I don't. That's the truth. Do I feel like I have a human responsibility to heal people on a deep level so that they don't become like that. Yes. Do I have an understanding of Jeffrey Dahmer as a little boy who was neglected and the mother was on pills and the father was always away? And yeah, I totally do, I totally do. But after a certain, I guess, a critical mass point, Jeffrey Dahmer decided to hunt people down, lure them into his apartment, drug them up, and then I think we know the rest, right? So, do I have empathy? No, I have disgust. I have human disgust for that. Uh, but I do have empathy for that soul that was originally of the light that was wounded so badly that became darkness. And I haven't finished the book Dracula, but I bet that it'll come to that the character Dracula must have somehow somehow he did a 180-degree turn from being of the light to choosing darkness. So that's fascinating. But I'm more on the preventative end. Let's make sure that our children don't end up that paralyzed emotionally. Let's give them what Dr. John Bowlby talks about: eye contact, skin contact, love, nurturance, attention, attunement, boundaries, um, all the stuff that makes us human. We need to do that. And so that's where my energy goes, to that. Any other great questions in the chat room, or anybody want to call in and we can
We,
talk about this? Is really leading me in the direction of join the human race, healing global disconnect. But please remember, I do not want to dance or interconnect with people who are evil. No, thank you.
can I ask you a question? And then we do have another question in the chat room. But
Yes.
I was thinking, where does forgiveness connect to empathy? Because you've seen these parents where somebody killed their child, and then in trial, when they got sentenced, the parent comes up, will say, I forgive you. Is that go with empathy, or is that something separate?
Another great question. Thank you for that question. I think that they're doing it for themselves to have some sort of a peace of mind, and maybe they're so plugged into the rottenness of the human
Right.
race and how children can go wrong and grow up to be murderers. And then maybe, because I've seen a lot of those shows. I love true crime, and I watch stuff like that. And sometimes the murderer will actually reach out to the family.
Right.
They'll
Mm-hmm.
start expressing empathy, which then opens the heart of the people who were, were the parents of of the person, the person that was killed. And so I'm not saying that it's unhealable, okay? It's just that you really have to be, we call it whatever level. Some people call it Christ consciousness, Buddha consciousness, God consciousness, whoever you want to identify with. If you're able to, um, the way I look at it is forgiveness must be earned. I don't give out free forgiveness chips to people. Somebody robbed me of money, and this has happened. I've lost a lot of money through people that I thought were my friends, and then turned out not so much. And so, if they want to reconnect with me again, they can't just say, sorry, I mean, it would take a
Right.
long process to repair such damage. And, would start with giving back every single penny plus interest, and then a true recognition and a truthfulness about why'd you do that. And if I detected BS, then game over, no thanks. But if they were big enough to say, I was really jealous of you, and I really wanted what you had, and I didn't think I could ever get it, and now I realize that what I did was absolutely disgusting. That person has to come to the point within themselves where they hate who they were being. Okay, so the murderer on death row genuinely has to hate who he has been being. So in that case, they're rehabilitating themselves because, in my book, I talk about the big I and the little I. And the little I is the compromised I, and the big I is the best of us. And so the person who's a reforming murderer, okay, or if I guess they can't reform from murdering somebody, but they can reform their consciousness, has to really uh, confront the evilness that lies within. And it's not just a confrontation from the victim saying, hey, you really hurt me. It's not going to penetrate. It's only when that person says, I hate the person I was. I reject all philosophy, all consciousness of who I've been being. And that's when it becomes possible, I think, for them to start their own healing and for us to have any level of empathy. You can even watch this in the courthouse when the judge sees the criminal come in, and the criminal is laughing. I've seen cases like that
Mm-hmm.
where the kid is laughing at the mother who lost her daughter, and she's screaming at him, how could you do this to my daughter? You have, you're so evil, you're, and he's just laughing, and the judge sees this, and maybe he was going to give him like 40 years in prison. Now he says, sorry, death penalty. Why does that happen? Because the judge can see there's no hope for this person. There's no hope. He's just beyond repair here. Laughing in the face of a mother whose child he murdered. I don't know how do you come back from that. So I think we're, as animals, as human intuitive beings, we can sense when people have a little bit of a beating heart, a little bit of remorse, of empathy, of regret, of something. There's got to be something there. It can't just be sorry. There's nothing in that. Sorry. I remember I used to tease my grandson. He used to do things that I got angry at. One day he dragged these blueberries out of my fridge and they were all over the floor. And I said, Alexander, you've got to clean it up. And he goes, you do it, Grandma. I said, look, I didn't spill them. I'll help you, because he was only like 3 at the time. So of course I was going to help him. But I said, you have to, you have to take some responsibility. So he says, sorry, Grandma. And I looked at him, I said, that is the most phony sorry I've ever heard in my entire life. And he cracked up because he knew I was right. And I said, you know what the real sorry is? And he says, what? Go clean it up. He got it. Okay. Um, so there are different levels of connect and disconnect. And if there's something there, then maybe it's healable. But if there's just a coldness, um, an evilness, a sense, an impenetrable shell. And that's what's happening in today's world. People, that's why, again, I'm referring back to Charlie Kirk, because he challenged people. Have you ever heard of people changing their mind? I just don't see it. Oh, I'm a Democrat. After talking to you, I'm now a Republican. Oh, I'm a Republican. Oh, after talking to you, I'm now, people don't change their mind that often. It really takes a lot. Do you notice that, Tony? It's just like
Oh yeah, for sure.
not going to happen. Once you're steeped in your own squat, then you're going to justify why you think that way. But, I don't love I love proof, But justification is a different story. Justification is sort of like, I want to defend my ism, but to just have an open conversation and talk truth and talk light, that's how we really know if we're in the light or if we're just justifying and staying stuck just because. So anyway, I know we went around the bend, but the topic today was, can we heal in a culture that lacks empathy? And I go back to saying no, because it's as subtle as this. A news reporter reports a story, and that's their job. But somebody is listening to that report and they're being triggered. Okay? Oh, little Sally was raped at 2 p.m. at the school by blah, blah, blah. Well, the mother might be watching that. How could she heal every time she hears it? And I'm not suggesting that we stop reporting, but there's got to be a consciousness that everything that we're putting out there in the universe is going to be somebody's trigger point. And we just have to be very empathic about that. Because that's what's happening now. Just a bunch of, turn on the news and you could get indirect PTSD.
That is true. It doesn't matter what channel you turn on. It's just it's hard. I used to be a news junkie, but it's hard for me to even turn on the news anymore.
Yeah, sometimes you have to take a break from that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
what somebody was asking about empathy for yourself.
I think that's big.
How does one begin that? Because I think sometimes it's easier to forgive somebody else than yourself.
Well, the question before about how do you have empathy for people who lack empathy? I think that the first, what do you do with that? So, who do you forgive? I think you forgive yourself. I forgive myself for entering into bad deals romantically, financially, spiritually, whatever level. I've entered into very bad deals. Um, what's my crime? Probably positive projection, which I've talked about, which I assume the good in people without really doing my homework and investigating, probably because I like to trust people. However, trust without boundaries can lead to violations. So, who do you forgive yourself? Forgive first is yourself, but you don't forgive yourself until you've self reflected enough to know that you won't do it again. You can't just say, I forgive myself. No, I forgive myself. Now I know that I have to do my homework. Now I know that I can't trust until I verify. Now I know that I should put contracts together. Now I know that I should get a better history on the person. Okay? Because without doing that, you're just going to be a repeat offender upon yourself or somebody else. So that's a really important step. And by the way, you should get my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect. And coming up soon, I'm almost done with it. I'll see if I could text it to you, Tony. Can I text it to that number?
Sure.
Hold it. Let me see if I can find it. Okay. I will see if I can find it. Okay. My new book. I've always been into the stop smoking process. Um, I wrote 2 previous books on quitting smoking, and this is going to be the last one, I promise. There will be no other books by Dr. Judy Rosenberg on quitting smoking. This is a deep dive into why people smoke and how to stop smoking and how smoking fills the hole in the soul. And it's going to be part of a series. Stop smoking and then alcohol and all kinds of different topics. So I wanted to give you a little preview of it. It's not quite done yet, but I might as well pre-advertise it. Isn't that what companies do, right?
Right.
Prequels. Okay, so if you have that one,
I'm just getting ready to download it right now.
yeah, thank you. And you could tell me what you think about the cover because I could still do stuff with it.
I love the chain. So let's see. Let me pull this into my system.
Thank you.
And da 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 da. Hey, there you go.
There it is.
It's
Okay.
beautiful. I like it. I love the color
Kick
and
it.
kick it.
Kick, kick it. Stop smoking and be the cause of better outcomes for your life. Cold turkey or gradual withdrawal, the choice is yours. And this is a quitting smoking is not about willpower. It's you've got to look at what is keeping you in psychological prison and look at the hole in the soul and why you smoke. So this is a deep dive into that, plus turning off to smoking. So for those of you who smoke, you can start reaching out to me, and hopefully I'll have this ready in the next month or so. So with that said, thank you everybody. Any other questions in the chat room?
I think that was it. But it was a great show, and I think very timely.
Thank you very much, Tony, for always being there for me.
Of course.
And remember that even when you tell a story about something horrible that happened, watch who you're telling it to because you might be triggering the wrong person. And,
Mm-hmm.
we're just never going to heal if we keep doing that.
Amen, sister.
All right, take care, everyone, and see you next time. Good night.